dew points.
Dew point numbers because
dew points. Dew points.
You hear us drop the dew point phrase a lot this time of the year, but we never really get time to explain exactly what that is. And sure enough, a lot of you have asked about it over the past couple of weeks. So I wanted to take some time with this episode and give you the down low on what the dew point is. But I gotta warn you, this one gets a little extra geeky. According to the AMS Glossary of Meteorology, the dew point temperature is the temperature that you would have to cool the air down to in order to bring it to what we call saturation. Now, a lot of people, when you hear the word saturated, think, okay, that means it's got to be raining. That's not necessarily the case. Technically, when we're talking about the atmosphere, saturation means that evaporation is happening at the same rate as condensation. And in fact, our atmosphere is constantly trying to achieve such a balance. The thing is, it's almost never perfectly there, and because of that, we have our weather. When we talk about dew points on Channel 2, we always do it showing a map like this, where each number represents the dew point temperature in degrees Fahrenheit for a respective location. Now, without much context, it doesn't really mean anything, so we usually pair it with a graphic like this. It relates the idea that the higher the dew point, the more uncomfortable it's going to feel for us. And that's generally true, especially this time of the year. It's worth noting that warmer air in the summer can hold much more moisture than the cold air that we get in the winter. That's why we don't really need to talk about humidity during the cold months, but dew point does come into play when we're talking about snow on the ground. If the dew point is above the freezing mark, which you would expect snowpack to be a little bit colder than, that's where we can get some of that pea soup fog, especially if there's a thick ice cover over Lake Erie. That's all well and good talking about dew point on television, but have you ever wondered where that number comes from? It can be done by one of two ways. You can either measure it or calculate it. Frankly, measuring it is going to be a little bit easier. It can be done using something called a hygrometer, or you can go a little bit low-tech and use something called a sling psychrometer. But let's get back to that calculating part. I gotta warn you, if calculus tends to induce anxiety, this is the part where you might want to look away. Here's the basic formula for dew point. Looks pretty harmless, right? Air temperature minus a couple numbers involving the relative humidity. Cool. Well, here's the thing. You have to calculate the relative humidity first, and that equation looks like this. Those little E's are what we call saturation vapor pressure. You get those numbers using this long equation invented by two guys named Clausius and Clapeyron simply to strike fear into all those that dare enroll in thermodynamics. You see why we just give you the numbers here on Channel 2? Yeah. You're very welcome. In all seriousness, all these numbers you see are indeed measured, not calculated by us on a daily basis. For more information on how we get these measurements at all the different airports, you can watch last week's episode of Heather's Weather Wise on the WGRZ YouTube page and our Facebook page as well. And assuming I didn't scare anybody away, we'll see you next week for another edition of Heather's Weather Wise. Until then, remember, it's good to be a geek.